another, by the way, about the pauses. Everybody is so uncomfortable with pauses.
There's one critical software engineering skill that I continue to see people ignore. And no, it's not going to change no matter how many lead code problems you go solve. Hi, my name's Nick Cosentino, and I'm a principal software engineering manager at Microsoft. In this video, I was joined by Maria Glazunova to talk about communication. And I think communication is one of the most important skills that you can learn as a software engineer. And I've told all of you this a million times, right? I've made plenty of videos about this topic because I think it is so important. Now, Maria is a coach for software engineers to be able to improve their communication skills. And I thought this conversation was awesome because we got to talk about not only communication, but language as well. And this really resonated for me because I've worked with people on my own teams where English is not their first language, and we've talked about different ways that we can work through communication. I think that there is so much value that you're going to be able to extract from this conversation, so I want you to sit back and enjoy. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future in the comments. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.
Mostly, I would say on my own and like solopreneur, entrepreneurship, I don't know, you can call it different ways.
Awesome, yeah.
I also work for a German company, and I have some clients from that direction, but just a few. And it's always like I'm kind of reducing the amount of clients from that side, and I'm of course increasing my own clients already, like with tech professionals, because that's what I'm passionate about. I really love working with tech professionals. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, that's really impressive, and I think it's I don't know, I think a dream for a lot of people to be able to say, like, I want to find something I'm passionate about and turn it into something that I do like on my own, right? I'm not doing that for someone. There's nothing wrong with that, but when you can do it on your own, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I'm doing that, I would say, because I have always dreamed of that. And honestly, communication skills. So maybe I can just tell about myself a
Yeah,
little
yeah. That's where I'm going. Yep.
Right. So I specialize in empowering tech professionals to skyrocket their careers, to build the confidence, to have this executive presence when they
Mm,
come to tell me, oh, I need to have this executive presence. Okay,
right.
guys, you got it. Yeah, so I'm helping with this. And uh, I can say that I have been always really passionate about communication,
Mm,
actually, as the core,
right.
because I would say this is my active position, active way of practicing peace, because through communication, people can really find some common ground with each other, some understanding. It reduces aggression. And when I'm able to help with that, through my clients, and of course
Right.
they go to their, I don't know, companies and so on, and then they come back and they say, oh, finally I was able to resolve that conflict, that issue. I was able to speak up. Oh my God, I feel like, I don't know, so good. So this makes my heart sing.
Right. That's
Yeah.
super cool. I know one of the things I say a lot, and maybe people that are watching or listening to this probably get sick of it, but I think that it's not said enough. And it's exactly what you said, just like the value of communication,
Mm,
especially when it comes to a field like software engineering. So many people are like, I need to get my coding skills up. I need to learn all these different technologies. And yes, like you're going to be using those things at work. And
mhm.
yes, that's necessary for an interview, but so many people seem to neglect the concept that your pardon me, your
Mhm.
communication skills are going to be like absolutely critical when it comes to working. You're going to be working in teams with other stakeholders, like, so all about this obviously. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I actually had a client and he told me, Mary, um, why I decided to become a programmer? Because I thought it would be just me and my computer and nobody else. I'm so
Right,
introverted and everything. So I really love coding. Just leave me with computer and I'll be like perfect. But
right.
then as he progressed through the ranks and he became, I think, an engineer manager already, uh, yeah, it's like, okay, guys, now it's 99% all about communication with people and dealing with people and managing people. And it's complete opposite, of what I actually had in mind.
Right. Even like, stereotypical like software engineers, programmers, it's like it's generally like a man like in a dark room, like with computers everywhere, and it's like all alone, like totally unable to interact socially. Like I'm obviously exaggerating the stereotype, but like it's just not the reality. Like you're interacting with so many people, like you cannot do your job effectively, I would say, for like 99% of roles unless you're working with other people.
That is true. That is true. And even juniors right now, what I see, because the tech industry, it's moving so fast, and you need to keep up, and you really need to, I would say, like, to rise through the ranks. And the more you want to do that, the more
Right.
you're like getting some higher positions. Of course, the more effective communication skills it requires. That's what I just see, when I'm working right now with tech professionals more and more. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess a question for you, do you find that like for the clients that you have coming to you, they obviously come to you because they want to improve in their communication. Are they finding like it's almost like a an oh crap moment for them where they're like, I'm in this situation and now I need to catch up on my communication? Or do you find that some of them are like more proactive about it where they're like, I see what's happening and I want to get ahead of it?
Right. I would say right now I'm getting more and more clients who are proactive.
Oh,
Maybe
cool.
because
That's
it's
great.
also my personality. I'm really proactive person, and I'm like already, like going, and I don't understand something. I'm just like going and learning, and this is also, I think, attracting some similar people or something in a way. So yeah, they are more of proactive, and honestly, they already have pretty good level usually. So I work like with software engineers, senior software engineers, and tech leads. I would say
Right.
this is my main scope in a way. And yeah, and they're like creating some content for LinkedIn, for example. And yeah, and they just want to get better, at that, at better at communication, managing teams, and so on. And yeah, so I would say the second, yeah, being more proactive.
That's
Mhm.
cool. And I feel like probably the people that are being proactive about it are more motivated to make change because they're like, I observe that I want this and therefore I will invest the time and effort, whereas maybe people doing it retroactively feel like almost like, I don't want to say guilted isn't the right word, but they're like, I'm falling behind, everything's like it's not good, like I need to catch up. And it
Yeah.
probably is worse framing, but
Yeah. No, I definitely understand what you're saying. And they're like suffering more in a way, because
right.
they're pushing themselves more. Because I worked, of course, with such people, definitely, yes. And in a lot of cases, actually, they come and sometimes they say, you know what, I have been doing everything. I try to, and they kind of put the emphasis on the language, not the communication skills, but the language, just the language,
Okay.
you know and like, oh, I have been doing everything. I have been watching films, Friends. I
Sure.
installed all the applications like Duolingo or something. You know what, guys? This is not really helpful, to be honest. If you need some, if you have some very specific goal, you need to have some very specific training for that, right?
Right.
It's like, I don't know, you're like a runner, and you decide, I don't know, like a casual runner, and at some point you decide, you know what, actually I want to become ready for the Olympics,
Sure.
and you just like run every day, just as you have been running all this time, and nothing happens. You're not really preparing yourself,
Right.
right? You're not really training, because it's about nutrition, it's about like specific muscles, like it's a really, really specific training if you really want to get ready to the Olympics, right? So that's what I'm telling also to my clients, guys, you need specific, very specific training.
Right. Now, you said something interesting and might be worth kind of explaining a little bit more. So, obviously, we're talking about communication in general and how that applies for software engineers in their careers. And you just mentioned language as well. So, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. Like, I'm assuming that a lot of the people that you're, and this is a total assumption. I'm assuming that most of these people might be like English as a second language and they want to be better at English, and maybe they're attributing too much of their challenges just to not being comfortable with English. But can you maybe elaborate on some of those parts?
Oh, absolutely. And you're so right. Yeah, I work with non-natives, right? Like English is the second language. That is true, from different countries, like, I don't know, Brazil, Philippines, Japan, Czech Republic, so like all over the world. And what I notice that a lot of them actually care and worry about completely wrong things in a way.
Okay.
You know, for example, their accent.
Right.
I don't know. Have you come across, such people who are like, oh my God, I want to sound native, whatever that means.
So I have not noticed people being worried about that, but
Okay.
I think probably one of the things you're going to talk about is like people's confidence with it. And the only thing that I end up observing is like their English is pretty great, like I can totally understand it. And all that I hear is the accent, and I'm like, it's cool, you have an accent, but it's not like a I have never heard an accent and I was like, "Oh, like that's weird." Like a bad thing. Like accents are always just interesting, unique, and it's never been a problem like to any degree. Like
Yeah,
to hear one, it's never been what is that? Yeah.
I know what you mean. I know. And I lived in Canada, and of course I was exposed to a lot of conversations, and
Right.
also my sister, she works in tech industry, so I was of course communicating with her guys at work and so on. Honestly, nobody ever told me, that, oh, something is wrong with your accent, you got to work on that.
Right. Yeah.
I do have an accent, of course
Yep.
everybody does, honestly.
Well, and
And
so this is a great point though. I'm from Canada and I live in just north of Seattle now. And you might have picked up on this, but if I have said the word about, people immediately go, "Oh, you're from Canada. You said a boot." And I said, like, "No, I didn't say a boot. I said about." And they said, "Yeah, it's the same thing." And I'm like, "It's not." But, I speak English and I have an accent from Canada and people pick up on it. So yeah, everyone has accents. It's totally true.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, and sometimes people just worry too much. Maybe
Right.
they somehow, maybe there is some kind of bias. I discussed this with one Luca Sartoni, and he mentioned that, you know what, American accent can be just seen more credible. So when there is
Sure.
when there is a meeting and there are different people from different countries, and when the person sounds, maybe not from America, but he or she sounds American, they, oh, okay, he has a point or something, might
Interesting.
be, might be, this bias. And that's why, because I was like, what's happening? Why people, everyone, honestly, everyone coming to me and they like, oh, there is something wrong with my accent. Honestly, everyone.
That's a really interesting point, and I think like as you're saying, you're not making the statement that oh, being like having an American accent therefore makes you more credible, but if you have so many people coming to you with that observation like I want to sound more American so that I can sound more credible, it does suggest that those people literally view that accent as more credible. So that's I've never thought about that. That's
It's
very
just
interesting.
subconsciously, because they don't,
Right.
like, they even tell me like, I want to sound like native. And this is like,
Right.
oh my gosh, this is like a mystery for me. Native, what does that mean? Like King Charles, like Tom Hanks, like who, you actually
Right.
want to sound like you, right? um I don't know, I love accents, and I think they definitely makes us, unique and really special. What is, I would say, important is that intelligibility, how understandable you are. Because if the accent becomes an obstacle, meaning
Right.
some kind of pronunciation moments, and that's what I'm working with guys as well as the part of I don't know, my program that I offer, that there are certain sounds and certain moments in pronunciation that interfere, that become like an obstacle, like from
Okay.
Brazil, guys from Brazil, or like from different countries, I would say. Yeah. So we're working on that. So I'm not like like reducing their accent or anything like that. Yeah, but
That
just they're clear. Hmm.
that makes sense, right? It's like it's not that the accent, like having an accent is the problem, but when it comes to like pronouncing different words and things like that, the different sounds that we need to be able to create, if your accent is such that it might interfere, and not with every word, but like there's different sounds that we go to make, then yeah, maybe if you want to enunciate them more clearly, you work around some of those things. But again, to your point, that's not like, oh, eliminate your accent. That's just make your accent work with these sounds you want to create. A very sort of inverse example of this as an English speaker, there is a Chinese person on my team, and
Mm.
his name, I'm not even going to try to say it. It's very simple written down. It's YU and then XIE. Sorry for saying his name, on in the public, but I don't think he would be upset by this. But his name is just looks like you, but the way that you say the U part, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like an sound. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot he's told people like, well, you're not making like that's not the right sound. So he just says, call me XY. So his nickname is XY,
Right.
and it's because like we're unable, a lot of us are unable to sort of make this sound as English speakers. So,
Right.
it works the other way too. It's not just like English speakers have, all the sounds we can make, but
Of course, because it's like an international language, and uh, yeah, it's like everybody. I would say, like in the business world, for example,
right.
yeah, we speak this language. It kind of unites us in different ways, right? So, of course, yeah. But once again, this standard really interferes, and really affects also the confidence of people because they try really hard. Like, for example, I had a client from no, she's from Iran, but now she's in Australia. And she told me, when I came to Australia, I mean, I was speaking fine, but because of the environment, because of my pressure on myself, my
Right.
own pressure on myself, that I need to catch up to some kind of invisible standard in the accent and everything. So yeah, it was like it put a lot of pressure, and of course, yeah, she was making like lots of mistakes. She was like really stressed and everything. And then when she had a good conversation also with her manager, and we also worked with her, so she
Mhm.
started to release this, like anxiety. And yeah, of course, she was
And
able to express herself better and just more freely, and yeah, and so on. There's another.
that's
Yeah, sorry. There's
Oh,
just.
no, that's
Yeah,
super interesting. And you mentioned the confidence part too. And I have pulled up on another screen here. I have your rocket framework, and I figured that might be kind of cool to start going through that because I know that one of the pieces, not right at the start, but towards the beginning slash middle, is confidence. So if you're comfortable with it, do you want to kind of walk us through your rocket framework? Because the confidence part in particular, I want to kind of chat through some different things that I've observed in my own career. So maybe
perfect.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So rocket approach. That's what I'm using inside. I would say my customized program, and I can just like walk through every letter
Sure.
and
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it's from, yeah, what it stands for. So the first one is R, and it's about refining business vocabulary, because a lot of my clients, they work for example, Canadian or American companies, and of course, people at work, they're using some vocabulary, some special slang and phrases, and especially in America and Canada, like a lot. So when you come and you start working there, of course, oh my god, what to do, I don't know, all this I don't understand. So kind of to become really comfortable with this language, with this vocabulary, and of
Right.
course, adopt it yourself so you can express yourself easily. You don't, like overthink and like thinking too much about, like don't translating sometimes in your head or something,
Right.
right? This is another thing. So it becomes more, uh, I would say, effective, and also how to use what you already have, because I had, such situations when I had like really low level of English, and she was able to express herself brilliantly, just to the point, effective,
Okay. Yeah.
limited but great. And advanced level, well, when she just couldn't, she was so perfectionistic about, she just couldn't, I would say a word, right? So it's also about like the mindset, I would say. I would say that language is 99% psychology, seriously. That's what I have
Interesting. Okay.
so far, seriously. Yes. Yeah, so we kind of work on that, on the vocabulary, that it's relevant and everything's
Right.
very specific, and people just go and use it and practice it, and we kind of learn all the strategies. So this is the first one, R. The
That's
next. Mm-hmm.
On the R one though, I wanted to say we have this like I want to call it a problem at Microsoft, and we joke that it's like an acronym company with a a software company with an acronym problem, or the other way around. But the point is that we have so many acronyms that when new people come on board, and they could be like, I am English as a first language, and when I joined Microsoft, it was like I don't know what all these acronyms are. You join meetings and everyone's talking about 3 or 4 letter acronyms, and you're like what are you even talking about, right? You can hear about the interactions between these things, but you're like, is that a team? Is that a product? Is that a piece of technology? Is that a protocol? Like, what are we talking about? And I've kind of like tried to take some better responsibility that when new people join the teams, that when I'm like in a meeting, let's say, and someone's talking, I will hear acronyms and try to type it out in the chat to people and say, hey, by the way, like this word or this acronym you're hearing means this, because people didn't do that for me. And it just takes so much longer to learn what these things are. So I wanted to kind of share that, like, especially on the business vocabulary, acronyms can be really challenging to work with, even language barriers aside. So I can only imagine for someone whose first language is not English, they're hearing acronyms, and it's like one more extra level of translation, right? It's definitely challenging.
Mm. And you're so kind that you provided, the
I'm
meanings.
trying. I'm trying to. I'm not perfect at it, but
But still, I mean, I think it means a lot to people because really, like when they, yeah, so they understand like immediately, and of
yeah,
course,
like I
yeah,
know the feeling of sitting there in the meeting and being like, "You've lost me completely now. I don't know what these words are." I'm like,
or like very very okay. What did you say?
yeah, yeah. Is that
Google.
something I can even search? And a lot of the times it's internal, right? Like it's like a Microsoft specific thing. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely challenging.
yeah, and yeah, because they're like if you just Google some word, it can give you so many definitions. Hello English.
Right. Yep.
So, oh my God, just one word and all of this. Yeah, yeah. It's weird sometimes, but it is what it is, right?
That's right.
Yes. All right. So the next one it's about organizing ideas
Okay.
uh, clearly and concisely because what I notice, and guys also tell me, oh, you know what, I struggle with structuring the idea without over explaining when
Okay.
I miss some word or I just say something and I want to make sure that people understand me and I start all this, I don't know, passage and people just lose me, and yeah, so this is a big thing, I would say, for clarity, that you're very concise. And clear.
Interesting. There's I don't know if this is exactly related. We were talking about this at work the other day because I was talking again with the individual I mentioned who's Chinese, and another person on the team who's also from China, and they were talking about situations where they're trying to say things in English or whatever, and actually this wasn't their experience. They were talking about friends' experiences where they get very nervous, concerned that they're using, like, say the wrong tense of words. So instead of saying like I am going to the store, they would say like I went to the store. And
Mhm.
in conversations, if someone's talking to me, if they're giving me enough context, I might go, "Oh, they just said the wrong tense," but I know that they're trying to go to the store, like no
Mhm.
big deal. And I think some of these people are like over, I don't know, over hyper focused on these things and trying to get them perfect. And then
Yeah.
I think that probably makes it more challenging for them. So to your point about organizing the ideas, it's like if you have the general idea, like you're good. Like it's okay.
Yeah, this is so good what you mentioned because I actually have even right now a client and he's one of the main challenges, overthinking,
Right.
because he wants also to sound polite, so he kind of gives all these beautiful polite words,
Right.
and also yes, and like overthinking about the grammar and how to And this is actually something that I will mention also a little bit later. But this interferes with listening a lot, because when you are in your own head, you're constructing and structuring all of
Right.
that. You're actually missing an important information another person tells you.
Right.
Communication doesn't happen.
Yeah, and this is so cool to talk through just because it's like it is such a core thing about what we're doing at work, right? And I'm hoping that there are people that are going to be watching and listening to this going like, if English is not their first language, they're it's resonating, right? Where they're like, I do that. Yeah, like I need to try and get better at that. Yeah, this is cool. But C is the next letter, and this is the one I'm super excited about. So tell us about confidence when it comes to all of this stuff.
Oh, yes, convey with confidence, right? When you're conveying your whatever message you have. Ooh, I have actually a lot to say about that, where to start. So you are interested in the confidence, how to build confidence, right?
That's yeah, and I think that in my opinion, building like you need to be able to you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like you need to build confidence in yourself to be able to do a better job like conveying your message with confidence. But would you say that those things are the same or do you see them as maybe different things?
Honestly, confidence is 99% psychological thing. It has nothing to do with the language, to be honest,
Right.
that
Okay.
much. I mean, to some extent, of course, yes. And it's very, very interesting because I'm more into the coaching. So I work
Right.
with some mindset and psychology too. And I had a client, and when she came, she was obsessed with pronunciation, like obsessed, like really. And her pronunciation was okay. I mean, she was from Brazil. I mean, there were some moments, but it wasn't like something that would interfere that
Right.
much. She was she was great. She was brilliant, I would say. And I was like curious, why is she obsessed so much? And
Mm,
sometimes she wouldn't feel so confident. And we had a conversation, and I just asked, and why do you feel like that? Why do
right.
you feel that you lack this confidence, and why are you so obsessed about pronunciation in the first place? And she actually mentioned, and I'm sharing this, by the way, with her permission, because I have
Cool.
already written a post about it. And she was like, yeah, it's totally cool, because maybe somebody can benefit from that.
Right. That's great. Yeah.
hmm And she mentioned that, what, when I was young and I had a job, and there was this person who mocked her pronunciation. She was really good. She was like really like into languages, Portuguese, English, German, and like she was really proactive. She was really, really great. So it was coming more from, probably, I'm not there to judge, but still, probably from some kind of not good place, let's say. And she
Right.
mocked her, and she was a high here. He was a higher position, I think, her manager. Yeah. And it affected her confidence, of course, a lot, and it connected. Okay, so yeah, my pronunciation is like bad, and I cannot communicate well, so she kind of created this connections,
Right.
in her head. And yeah, so, and that's why she started to work like really too hard. And and she still told me that, it's sometimes, yeah, I can hear his voice, and his words, and
Right.
it still affects me. And when as we were talking, and okay, you bring once again awareness to the situation. Right now we are talking, how are you feeling right now, talking about all of this? How
Right.
do you feel about, like, I don't know, your pronunciation? She's like, you know what, I feel really confident. I'm like, split of the second.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. The I mean, it's kind of it sucks to hear that someone had like a bad experience where someone that maybe they look up to this person. I don't know what the relationship was like, but at least someone that they're in a position of power, let's say, has made someone, and it could be a small comment, but it's like you got to be careful with how you talk to people because that can have such a long lasting impact on how people feel. So I just wanted to say that really sucks to hear. So feel bad for that person, but um yeah, like the hyper focus on pronunciation in terms of trying to restore that confidence, right? Like they're
Yeah.
so brought down by it. um Now, would you say that a lot of your clients are coming to you like primarily because confidence? Like, is that one of the biggest drivers, or are
Yeah.
they are they like I'm confident, but I just know like I need to improve some skills? Like, I'm assuming it's not really the second part.
Everybody 100% comes with the first one. They're looking for confidence. First of all, this is the first.
Right.
Now, this is very interesting, because what I mentioned with this particular person, it was an external person who said something, right? And it affected you, right?
Hmm.
But in a lot of cases, I think you also mentioned it during the live about negative self talk because we do
Right.
it to ourselves.
Yep.
We're
And I'm
abusing our
not good at
words.
fixing that yet, but I'm every time I said it to my wife this morning. The context was she was talking about sewing pants, and I said, "I have tried before and I'm terrible at it." And I
Mm,
was walking away as I said it, and I turned around and I said, "No, I'm not terrible at sewing pants." I said, "I tried to sew pants once or twice. I didn't enjoy it. It was challenging." And I jokingly said, "But maybe one day I could be good at sewing pants." But sounds ridiculous, but I just wanted to say it out loud. So I was like, no more negative self talk. Like, you have to stop doing this.
Same, yeah. And sometimes I'm doing something like, oh, I cannot do this yet.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's nothing like no one is expected to be able to take on a new skill and be like perfect at it right away. So, sure,
Exactly.
currently you cannot do it, but with time and practice, absolutely. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. And also another thing, imposter syndrome that affects all of us. And this is something that, yeah, just amazing phenomena. Um,
It's truly everyone. Yes.
yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know any, like, just one single person who didn't say or who hasn't said, like, oh, I don't have that. Yeah, I think this is also very human that we have that. And honestly, I'm kind of trying to reframe it because this is something that actually makes us human because
Right.
it kind of pushes us to evolve, and to really go deeper and to be more compassionate and, yeah, just like go into some depths of something. And
Right.
we basically, and I believe that we really have this because, well, we care.
Yeah, that's such a good way to frame it too, is like acknowledging that it's a human thing. So instead of saying like, how do we eradicate this? Like, how do we just push this away? It's like, no, accept that this is something that happens and learn to understand it, try to interpret what it means, and then kind of use it for growth, right? It's like things that are challenging help us grow. Things that are uncomfortable help us grow, but they don't help us grow if you just like put all of your energy into like how do I mask this and hide it as much as possible, right? Like leverage it.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah, because we lose energy a lot. It's like fighting with your shadow. It will be
Yeah,
always there, right?
right. Yeah. That no, that's exactly it. So instead of fighting it, like what can you do with it, right? Like um but this confidence topic I think is so important because like the reason I wanted to jump into this one is because in my experience with managing people, especially at Microsoft in particular, as it pertains to communication and language, this has been something that comes up all of the time. And I've been very fortunate to have employees from Mexico, Brazil, Costa Rica, so sort of these Latin American not companies, Latin American countries. See, I can't. There's my English. But the what I've noticed, and it's not even just these countries. I've had people that were like they've been living in the U.S. for years, and they're from places in Europe and things like that, or even in Asian countries. And the the observation has been that like when I'm in team meetings and stuff, like they're talking. Um, sometimes I'll pick up on some things, maybe like people are stuttering, like I just did, or they're um, they're pausing a lot to look for words, and I'm like, that's fine. Like I know English isn't your first language. Like you're doing an amazing job. And to be clear, I can only speak English. So if someone tried to get me to go into a conversation of a different language, I wouldn't say a word because I can't. So these people that are, they're making it through and they're doing a great job. There's little things I can pick up on where I'm like, oh, I'm curious if they're stuttering or pausing a lot because maybe they are struggling a little bit. I don't I don't like I'm not going to prod them on it, but it comes up in one-on-ones. Like naturally, people come to me and they'll say like, "Hey, I like just so you know, like I have a lot of difficulty feeling confident in team meetings or speaking about these things." And I'm sitting there going like, "Man, like you're doing an amazing job. Like there's no way, and maybe I shouldn't use the negative self-talk, but I think it would take me an extreme amount of effort and time to be remotely close to being, your level of English, but for me in a different language." But it comes back to confidence. They're they're lacking so much confidence in themselves when they are doing a very good job in the first place. And why this is so challenging, not just in general, because I'm sure that's very challenging for them, when it comes to career growth and impact and stuff like that, they feel like they can't have their voice heard in like a technical forum because they're like, I'm not, they could be, they have the algorithm figured out, they know the coding solution to go do it. But now they're like, I don't want to speak up about this because like I don't have confidence to do it. And it's this whole new barrier that's like, I don't want to say it's like self-inflicted or self-imposed. It's not really fair to say. Sometimes a little bit if they're
Hmm.
hyper focused on things, but I think it's totally fair that if people aren't comfortable or confident yet, that this is going to be something that slows them down. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that because it's been an observation I've had at work.
No, this is amazing. That's what I see absolutely the same. Yeah, that's what I'm also helping a lot. I think this is, I would say, the most of the focus that I'm doing with people actually to
Right.
go through, this building this confidence. And this is something that I started to do, and it's been helping people a lot. It's actually coming from Atomic Habits by James Clear,
Cool. Yep.
working on small wins with people. So noticing small wins. And this is something that is sometimes even so hard for people because they are not accustomed to notice something good, some like little progress. It's
Right.
either huge progress, or some negative stuff that they cannot do, that, this kind of negative stuff. And from day one, I'm really strict about, I'm kind teacher, but I can be strict. you know, um, yeah, I'm like really, I would say, like, encourage them to write down every day, daily, their small wins, and like really tracking them down. So after, for example, our program, they need to have at least 50 small wins,
Right.
at the end. And at first they is like, oh my God, I cannot, just do it, just do it. And I'm
Right.
helping them, just like noticing. But this is, this actually does some magic, honestly, because um they start to analyze themselves and they start feeling it, because it doesn't matter what I tell them. Oh, you're doing an amazing job, blah blah blah. It's
Right.
all blah 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 for them. They need to feel it from the inside. It's growing right
A
within,
100%.
right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And when they start doing that and noticing that and raising awareness, actually, and this is also something that helps us also to get into this, like mindset and state of an explorer. We're experimenting, like in the
Right.
lab. Oh, this worked. Okay, this doesn't. Oh, okay, there is an explosion. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Right.
well, I won't do this like next time, and so on. So we kind of experimenting and exploring, and also the feedback is really important here. And it's really important for me to create from the day one, from the very first meeting, safe environment
Right.
and this non-judgmental environment, so the person feels really comfortable and, yeah, it doesn't feel like, oh my God, I'm making mistakes or whatever that is. So we're exploring here, so we
I
kind of,
I think that's great. The atomic habit kind of part about making notes about the small wins.
yeah.
So I don't I don't know if it's like just me or if it's like maybe people that are like, very into software engineering, like need logical steps for stuff. Um, when I used to hear this kind of thing, I'm just going to be transparent. I used to be like, that must be just made up. Like,
Mm.
show me some proof of that. It just sounds ridiculous. Like, it kind of sounds like it's magic or, someone was like, that sounds cool. Let me say it. And I'm going to use my wife as an example here, but she would say like things like, if you're using negative self-talk, or if I do a lot of like when I'm analyzing things, I look for like the worst case scenarios. But she'll say things like, "Oh, you're manifesting that," and I'm like, "Look, some of this stuff like I can't get behind, but I feel like the more that I pay attention to it, there's truths in it." And when you were using the atomic habits reference and like making note of the small wins, it's not okay. And this is, I think, where I used to struggle with this. It's not that when you write down your small wins, that just magically makes you better.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
that's not what's happening, right? It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's the fact that you can have evidence to yourself. Hey, look, I am doing good things. It it's not writing it down that magically makes it happen. It's the ability to reflect, the ability to have evidence, and as a result, you kind of said it. You have a feedback loop where you're going, hey, like I'm doing stuff, and look, I have evidence. Feedback, feedback, feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That's the magic. It's not like suddenly you're casting a spell that you write down, I did good, so therefore I'm good. So anyway, I wanted to say that out loud because I don't know if there's other people that have the same mindset as me where they're like,
Mm.
that can't be real. It doesn't just work that way. Like, try it
This is
because it
right.
does.
No, this is good. This is good. And what I notice, I have right now, for example, this client from Philippines, and we, of course, I do this with everyone. And he started. He's like really thoughtful, and he brought a lot of awareness
Mm,
to the process that he hasn't done before, as he shared with me. And he shares a lot of stuff that he started to notice, not only like the small wins or big wins, but actually what's happening, and what he's doing, what works, and so on. It's helping our process immensely because I'm building on that. Oh, nice.
right.
Okay, what if you do this? And we're kind of dancing, uh, with our feedback, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can
Keeps
leverage different
feedback,
feedback.
right? Exactly, because I'm always actively, I would say, searching for the feedback from clients. Like, really, I tell them from the start. At first, they are really uncomfortable with that. Some of them, "Oh, I don't want to criticize you." I'm like, it's not about that. It's
Right.
just, it's like, just imagine you're like a software engineer. I don't know. You build some software. Here's your user, and he's using your software. And do you think this user's feedback can benefit you so you can improve your software? Do you think
Yeah.
it would be like really, or it would be like, oh, he's like just criticizing, and he's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, oh, okay.
They
And
might be criticizing, but it's still feedback and it's still going to be immensely helpful. So,
I love it. I love it because it's helpful so much, because then like, oh, okay, then it's like easy to navigate the ship. Okay, we're going like left, right.
right.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Okay, no, this is really good for confidence, and I'm checking your list. So, you touched on this earlier in our conversation, but I hadn't thought about this. The next one in the Rocket framework is K for keep listening actively, and you had mentioned that when so much effort is going into all of these other things, something happens, and it's your ability to listen actively. So how do
Mm,
you help clients balance that? Because they're going, I want to improve on all these things. I'm trying to think about all this stuff. And
right.
where does the active listening get to happen?
Exactly, exactly. Oh, I would say that we are looking into different strategies. And of course, we are talking about that, guys. It's not like listening to respond, because in this case, you're constructing something in your head and you actually don't listen, but
Right.
it's listening to understand. And we can even role play. For example, I can tell them something, and I can ask them, okay, can you ask me clarifying questions? How would you ask me to keep going? Yes. How do you paraphrase? This is
Right.
something that, for some guys is like extremely difficult, like paraphrasing what I have just said, to, I don't know, to validate, to make sure that they understood correctly something, so in an active way, and
Hmm.
just letting go of everything they try to construct. And yeah, and it's surprisingly sometimes it's super difficult, but it's a great practice. And of course, we also kind of go deeper into the listening,
Sure.
because they work, of course, in all these international environments. My sister also is a very bright example. When she came to Canada at first, she thought her level of English was very good, and
Okay.
she understood that it was like really far from the truth, because she was surrounded with native speakers mostly. No, I mean, there were, of course, like there are some international guys there as well, but mostly Canadians. And they would speak really fast because this is just their, like I would say, natural state of being, I would say.
Right?
And they wouldn't really pause much, and they would say, this like big chunks, for example. And yeah, she needed to look at the person like directly to be able to, kind of catch all these meanings, because if she overheard somewhere, it would be like a melody, like, oh my god.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we are working on, also pay attention to some, when the person is making pauses, when the person is making some stresses, because stress words, they convey the meaning, so you can also like grasp the meaning, right?
Right.
And another, by the way, about the pauses, everybody is so uncomfortable with pauses. I'm not an exception. Sometimes I was like,
Yeah, it's true. This is the pausing thing. It's a slightly different reason for it, but we have a CVP at Microsoft in my organization. I don't think she like invented this, but I think she got it from teachers, and I think this is the story. But anyway, there's situations where she'll say like, "Does anyone have questions?" or she's waiting for feedback, and she will count to 30 in her head, right? She will wait for 30 seconds. And the idea is that for basically everyone, that is so wildly uncomfortable that someone has to speak.
I know.
People aren't good with silence for whatever reason. There's different thresholds, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why they have these filler words like like. I mean, in a
Yep.
conversation, sometimes it's okay when you're like sprinkling this, so you kind of, it
Yep.
humanizes you. But if you're doing a presentation or you're speaking up during the meeting, you want to be as concise as possible, so it's better to eliminate these things. Or you're, I don't know, presenting some video or something. So yeah, and just pausing, just giving yourself some time and space to just think. Nobody
Yeah,
will
there's
say,
nothing
oh,
wrong with it.
exactly, oh, he has nothing to say or something. No,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever, I don't know. Yeah, so it's something that we're not accustomed to, and but this is definitely gives, also other people some space for digestion as well,
Right.
There's actually another thing that I wanted to mention. I had a Japanese student, and I would say one of his main challenges was when he came to Canada to work for some company. And so people, for example, would say something like really fast and for some period of time. And for example, he didn't catch something in the beginning.
Okay.
He was like, he was thinking that it would be so impolite to ask the person to
Oh,
clarify. And what happened that, well, the person thinks that you understand the message, right? And they kept talking, but he had this misunderstanding there that was just like rolling and becoming bigger and so on. So it was like a really bad situation. And yeah, and we worked with him in the beginning, from the beginning. If you have some questions, it's totally fine to
yeah.
clarify. This is actually polite.
Yeah, and like to I can absolutely back that up. There's people on my team. We're in one-on-one, so we're working remotely, we're on video calls, and I've absolutely said to people on my team, one-on-one, like, hey, like, and I'll start explaining something, and I'm pretty bad at going on for too long. And I've had people go, I can kind of see they're pausing after, and they're like, I didn't understand, like, could you repeat that? And I have never once in my life been like, I can't believe someone had the audacity to ask me to repeat it. I'm offended. I'm like, oh, like, like in my head, am thinking, thank you so much for asking that, because if you would have just been like, and like not understood, what would have happened? So people will ask, and I go, oh, like, no problem. And I just find a different way to explain it. I've always had the mindset when you're communicating with people, if someone doesn't understand what you're saying, it's not like, it's not their fault. it's your fault as the person communicating it, and then you need to find a different way to try and explain it. So, people asking for clarity, it's great.
Yeah, and we also think in different way. We phrase things in different way. And also like when another person, and this is actually interesting point, that it's also like my responsibility when I'm conveying some message. It's my responsibility that the person understands it exactly the message that I want them to understand. Because sometimes they
Right.
can be, yeah, sure, and something different. It
They
happened to me.
heard you. Yeah.
I know, yeah, they heard you, right? Yeah, sure, and they do something completely different. And like, what's happening? But you told me like this. Wow, I didn't know that it could be understood this way, right?
Right.
Yeah, so kind of
Communication.
sure, exactly, yeah. So yeah, even I don't know in my native language, I don't know. My friends sometimes tell me, "Mary, could you repeat that or something?" Oh, I didn't
Mhm.
catch that. I didn't get it, or I don't know, or oh, I have some porridge in my mouth or something. Like, oh, sorry, yeah, too tired or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
It just happens to me, also from time to time. So I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
totally fine.
it's normal. It's part of communication. So no, I think that's really good. And we have two more on the list. It's the last word, the IT part. And then these ones are really good too. So inspire, influence, and impact. That's three I's altogether. Um, can you tell us more about what this one means?
Right. Well, I would say it's about delivering some presentation, right, or during the meeting. But once again, it's not really about just what, I don't know, PowerPoint presentation. It can be
Sure.
just presenting during the meeting about some feature that you, I don't know, you came up with to your colleagues, and make sure that once again how you do that, how impactful you are, that other people also get it and they take action and they
Right.
really like listen to you and stuff. And yes, and that you showcase your expertise and you can handle questions, for example, right? So you come across as a, well, influential person. And this is very interesting because I remember, and this is actually, this comes to the next one. Okay, I will kind
Eh,
of the next one. Yeah, so the next one is tailor your tech expertise to non-tech stakeholders.
I
And
love this one, by the way.
you know and this is a big one because I remember it's actually started with a client of mine, and he came to me and he told me, you know what, I would like to be more persuasive and assertive.
Right.
Give me phrases, certain phrases
Okay.
that I can say to persuade other people. I'm like, okay. Kind of doesn't sound right, I'm not sure
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like that, we started to dig deeper into the, well, what was the situation, like in what situation you would like to be more persuasive or whatever. And he said that, oh, it's actually my miscommunication with my manager. And then I started kind of to dig deeper and talk like with tech guys, and also talk with managers to
Mhm.
understand their perspective as well. And I even had like a few lives with, I don't know, Graham Viatelli and Luca Sartoni and so on. So because they really shed some light for me on this topic. And you too, by the way. You had an amazing interview with John Cricket,
Right. Yeah.
and you talked a lot about business value.
Yeah.
And this is something that I can understood because it can be not about the language that is the problem. It can be that you talk about different perspectives, right? And in a
One
lot of
hundred percent.
yeah, in a lot of cases, software engineers, they can be a little bit too, like, they can have some narrow perspective just within their scope
Right.
and not going beyond that, right? And managers, they have different perspective, right? And they need to take care of business and business outcomes and everything. And of course, if you don't connect these two things,
Right.
miscommunication happens, not because of your grammar, sorry, or
Yeah.
accent.
It's not your accent. It's not your grammar. It's something else. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and this is something that we also talk with them. And this is already about being proactive, right? And really understanding and wanting to understand the bigger picture and talk to the manager, really trying to kind of get into those shoes, to really understand what they care about, what they need, and so on, and start communication from that angle. Ask open-ended questions, for example.
Right.
um, yeah, and then find some common solutions that can benefit both of you.
Right.
uh, but it's about a conversation that is based on this information, and really kind of getting to know into that, using English just as a tool.
That's I think I love this list because when I look at Rocket, in my head I was like, some of these things, like I know that they apply, it's language agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's English as your second or first language.
Mm,
Some of these things, especially when it comes to confidence, I'm like, I've seen this come up more with folks that English is a second language. So I'm like, okay, I can understand maybe some of this feels like it's more tailored for, ESL kind of situations. Totally fine. But this last one in particular is, and like how this all builds up, I'm like, it has nothing to do with language at all. It's and when I say language, I mean like English or Spanish or like spoken language. It's all about the sort of like the perspective or the value proposition. So this
mm,
individual that you were talking about that was saying, what phrases can I use to be more persuasive? I'm not like an expert salesperson, and I think a lot of software engineers or engineers in general don't like thinking about sales, right?
mhm,
But when you're trying to persuade people, it's quite like selling. Like you need to be able to think, what value does this is this person that I'm trying to communicate? What are they after,
mm,
right? If you're trying to say, I think we should go do thing X, if
mhm,
you're not explaining to the other person the value that they're going to get out of it, why would they ever want that? Right? Like it
right.
would be like me saying to my wife, like, I know you want a new house, but this new car, like I like this would be a great thing for us. She'd look at me like, what are you talking about? Well, I want the car, right? But so I need to say to my wife, like, hey, if we got the car, then the house would come with it or something, right? Obviously a terrible example, but she
You need
wants
a
the
British
house.
accent, or something like that, to
Yeah,
say
it's you have to find what people are after to be able to persuade them. So that way you can find a way to, as you said, meet them in the middle in your communication. And without it, I think that's the biggest gap. It's not going to be the language barrier.
exactly, exactly, and confidence. And honestly, when I just work with guys, they come with certain set of problems that they tell me they have,
Right.
but usually that's really far from the truth.
Right.
And
Yeah. And that's good. It's good that
yeah,
you can navigate that with them, right? That's so awesome.
yeah, no, yeah, of course, we talk about them, and I try also not just talk about them, but to show once again through different things, so they actually use their awareness and use their own observations and see for themselves, and then they are able to make this change.
Right.
Because otherwise, yeah, of course, I give my feedback. Of course, this is also important because I haven't thought about this way or something. So it's beneficial, but I would say even more beneficial when they can see it for themselves, and then yeah, this like more lasting change, can really.
Right. You're giving them the tools to be able to kind of, longer term do this for themselves, which I think is awesome. I wanted to mention that I think like a really good takeaway from this conversation for me, I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier, was just like, again, the framework that you're going through is so applicable to, it's not just people, where English is not their first language, but so many of these things are things that everyone could benefit from in software engineering, and I'm sure other other disciplines as well. But I notice it a lot with software engineers, and I think many people could benefit from it. Of course, um, you introduce extra friction and barriers when English is not your first language. So, I think you're doing an amazing bit of work here by trying to help people through this, because I think it's one of the most impactful things you could do in software engineering.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it just inspires me, I would say, a lot to work with communication, as I already mentioned, right? And when I see, I always tell to my clients, you know what? my best part of work is to help you to get rid of the limitations that you have in your head and
Right.
not to teach you present perfect. Seriously.
Right. Yeah. I think that's great. I think they need to hear that.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'll get more information from you and stuff offline, but if you want to let people know, where can they find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Right, right. Well, I have a website, mariaglazunova.com. And there are different ways how you can, I would say, you can write me in email, or there is some form that you can
Okay.
just, yeah, just basically leave your request or something. And also LinkedIn, just write me a DM and we can figure out because basically, yes, I offer for now this 10-week customized program for tech professionals. And yeah, so first of all, we of course meet for just a free chat for 30 minutes and just understand what are the challenges, uh,
Right.
what is the context, and like if what I have matches your situation. That's it.
Right.
So,
That makes sense. That's
sure.
great. And like I said, I'll make sure I'll get those links from you so that I don't uh, mess up any spelling or anything like that. They'll be in the comments in the description as well, so that people can go check that out. So I wanted to say thank you so much for having the time to talk through this. I think it's an incredibly important topic. I push two really big narratives. One of them is about communication in software engineering. So I'm glad to have other people come on and talk about that.
Oh, thank you so, so much for having me, for inviting me, and it's been really a pleasure. Yeah, as you said, you're, I don't know, such an open and kind person, and you're just, like the same off screen, and like everywhere,
You're not going to tell people this was all just a character that I put on. So
Exactly. Yes, is it? Just, yeah, just amazing conversation. So thank you for that.
cool. Okay. Well, thanks again. And yeah, for folks that are watching, definitely check out Maria. You've heard from her all the awesome benefits. So I think there's a lot to be gained. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.